for the world here. My name is Renata Lurch, and I'm a Vice President at the International Coaching Federation. We are so excited to be part of the World Values Day. Thank you very much for joining us on this fantastic opportunity to discuss the value of empowerment through coaching. Our speakers today are awarded coaches and thought leaders from around the world. Yeni Aseged is a transformational leadership practitioner with almost 30 years of experience. Yeni is based in Europe. Janet Harvey is a best-selling author of the book Invite Change and a coaching in organizations with more than 25 years of experience. Janet is based in the US. Dumi Magalela is an executive and team coach, a coach trainer, and also an author on coaching people development and Ubuntu values. Dumi is based in South Africa. And Magda Mook is the CEO of the International Coaching Federation and also a trained professional coach and systems facilitator. Magda is based in the US, although she is originally from Europe. We will have time to answer your questions at the end of the session. So please submit all your questions through the chat, and Tiffany and I will be selecting them and making sure the panelists can answer at the end of the call, the last 15, 20 minutes of the call. And I would also ask you to please mute your devices because we have a lot of people here, a lot of people coming in and leaving. So we want to make sure that there's no intrusion or no other sounds other than the panelists. So let the fun begin with Yeni. So Yeni, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Renata. And good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are. Welcome, colleague coaches from around the world. Warmest greetings from my side. And to my colleagues, Janet, Dumi, Magda, Renata, Tiffany. Yeah, thank you so much for creating this wonderful space for us to explore value of empowerment through coaching. So there are 5 stages of empowerment, and this means that we have 5 levels where we can actually dive in and look deeper into what empowerment means and what and how coaching can be practiced and expressed through that. There's level 1. Excuse me, I have a cat in my throat. Hold on. I don't think we can say that in English, but we say that in French. So level 1 is self-awareness. And this is where empowerment happens when we have awareness of who we are and how we are in the world. What does it mean to be me? Who is me? And how does me show up in relation to others and in relation to the context? And that's the main lines what we're going to look at self-awareness. Then we have individuals as agents. So the question is me, the I, an agent of change? And how does that translate in practical terms? What does I or me need to grow, to change, to transform in order to be the best possible change agent wherever we are? And how does this awareness build into the system? Which brings us to level 3, feeding the system. What does it mean, feeding the system? So what is the system that me, I, is operating in? How can I be the best possible change agent and impact that system? My system might be my organization, my family, my community, and any kind of grouping that I call my system that I belong to. So how do we move from this level to impacting the greater whole at the world level? That brings us to level 4, impacting the world. And so what I want to share with you is that the ripple that me, generates in the system has the potential to extend its ripples to the level of the world. So this brings us to level 5, which is agency and Ubuntu. Ubuntu, I am because we are. It's about the sacred oneness that we have and that we can choose to practice. So level 5, agency Ubuntu, it's when I allow myself to shine my light with love, with compassion and empathy. Then I make space for others to also shine their light as well. And this is when we co-create magic and fireworks happen at the universal level. And so in this time that we have together, my colleagues and I will now share with you stories and experiences to take you through each of these levels, infusing colors and textures to make it all very tangible. And so on this note, I'm going to pass the floor to Magda. Magda, over to you to take us to self-awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Yane. Thank you for this introduction. And, you know, I think that we are talking about very important multiple layers of this conversation. One is values, one is empowerment, one is coaching. And through our stories, we would like to take you through a journey of how it happens together. So let me start with self-awareness and share a story of a colleague of mine who happens to live in one of the major cities in the United States. She is a coach, and she noticed at one point in her life that the clients she was working with definitely did not represent the demographic of the people that were living around her. She found it to be a bias or maybe a blind spot. And many people in situation like that, when they see something happening around them, they are not exactly sure what and if they can do anything about it. And yet, with her value of fairness, with her value of inclusivity, with her value of equity, she said, well, I don't need to wait for any invitation. I can do something in my environment. And for her, what it was to make sure that she reached out to potential clients that would represent that greater diversity in her environment. And then next step she took was to talk to people who otherwise were not necessarily well represented in a coaching field in her city to consider the career in professional coaching, or at least just inquiring about it. Again, she found empowerment in her own values. She found empowerment rather than limitation in the fact that she indeed could do something. She could create a change around her. She had no idea how big the impact would be. And what do you know? Soon after, her colleagues and friends in the coaching community were saying like, if you're doing that, perhaps I should do the same. Or if you're doing that, tell me what I need to know. Tell me what I need to pay attention to. Tell me how I can be a part of it. And again, not terribly long after that, the entire chapter started talking about the importance of being more reflective of the community that this chapter happens to operate. They call it a mirror project. And I think that this is so powerful because mirror is so that the clients they work with and the colleagues they work with mirror the composition of the environment that they're living within. And again, when we talk into the fact that everything starts with the self-awareness, as I said, she recognized her own bias or maybe blind spot, and she didn't stop there. She didn't wait for an invitation. She didn't wait for somebody else to do something. because of her values, because of her deep, of course, engagement with professional coaching, she was ready to feel empowered herself, and by her actions to empower others to make a change around her. So with that, I would like to pass it to Janet to talk more about our next level, and exactly as my colleague and friend influenced and maybe inspired colleagues around her, how an individual can become an agent of change, empowerment, and ultimately building that super important agency of Ubuntu.
Thanks, Magda, and to all of my colleagues, and especially Renata for inspiring us to bring this forward. Story helps us put ideas and concepts in something practical for us. And the story that I want to share is about a healthcare system here in the United States, and how their decision to adopt a coaching mindset and coaching skills capability was the way that empowerment became a reality and not just a word for them. They were focusing on a particular dilemma, and it had surfaced in the group of clinical leaders. Now, most of you probably know that in healthcare, being a clinical expert, being excellent in your approach both to supporting wellness in the community as well as eliminating illness is essential. That being an expert, however, also comes with a downside. And what they began to see was things were a little out of balance. Yes, they were very effective at quality and being able to be responsive when an urgent need arose. And yet a little bit of a perfect storm started to show up. And the clue they were looking at was the attrition in the clinical leaders, both docs and nurses. And this was between male docs and nurses and female docs and nurses. Probably can already guess they were seeing an unusually high level of attrition of the women. And as they began to examine this, they realized that there was something in the interpersonal dynamics in the system that was creating conflict so uncomfortable. Not only did it disempower, but it was causing them to lose really talented, wonderful clinicians from the system. So what they decided was to look at coaching capability. And as we brought this solution forward for them, we said, let's first start at the level of mindset. Now, what does that mean? In professional coaching, one of the things that makes it so empowering is the mindset stance we all carry with every person we touch and ourselves, that we see each other as whole, already whole, completely resourceful, capable, and innately creative to step toward anything in front of us, any relationship, any circumstance, any situation. Do we always use all of our resourceful, capable, creative selves? No. Do we always have all the skills we need? Maybe not. But as a fundamental premise, we have the potential to do so. And when we allow ourselves to express and engage with each other from that mindset, we create an environment for empowerment. And that's quite a different mindset for a leader to adopt when they are habit-based or preference-based as experts. So that was the challenge. And these characteristics of whole, resourceful, capable, and creative was an opportunity for the leaders to realize that they'd been focusing on what was missing, what was not working, what was creating challenge, what was the problem to be solved, and only thinking it was theirs to solve. So as a result, it would be dismissive. They weren't listening, even worse, not even asking Who else has an idea here? What might be another possibility? And that dismissiveness was what was leading to the attrition. My competence isn't welcome here. Why should I stay? Is what the female docs and nurses were saying to themselves. Human beings are not problems to be solved ever. They're individuals to be celebrated and acknowledged and encouraged and given opportunity. And when we don't get that opportunity, we make the decision to walk. So we said, once you get the mindset in place, the next step for you is some particular skills. Probably already are hearing some of the keys. Presence. Am I even aware that I have somebody else in the room with me? I've watched the emergency room, and it's an amazing process of very quick movements. Being able to speak clearly, being able to allow vulnerability to say, I don't know. Now imagine for yourself as a clinical expert being able to say, I don't know. That takes some courage, and it opens the door to ask the question of another. Who else is with me right now that has an idea and something to contribute? And then stay present to hear the answer. As they began to learn these skills and expand their curiosity, they invited partnering. And they started to see a shift in the morale and the energy in the clinics and in the hospitals both. We asked them to, the folks who were running the project internally, we asked them to keep a culture journal, that's what we called it, to see evidence that people were shifting their vocabulary and their way of interpersonal relating. It was but weeks, and they started to hear those terms being used in the hallway. Having a meeting and somebody saying, hang on a second, are we looking at this as a problem? Or are we looking at this to see where are the alternative possibilities? What else could be possible here? And ultimately, over time, and it really only took about 9 months, they fully embedded the coaching mindset and skill set into onboarding processes, into employee development, and to leader development. And I had somebody actually send me a note from them just the other day who said, you know, I can't imagine what our company was like before we adopted the mindset of receiving each other as whole, resourceful, capable, and creative. It just feels better. And the thing they stand for, the noble cause in healthcare, to be in good care with each other. That's what got restored, their humanity and sense of care for their community and for each other. And that's agency of empowerment. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Jenny.
Thanks, Janet. That's fabulous. And I love how you say human beings are not problems to be solved. We're whole already. And when we talk about feeding the system, I want to share with you a story, or an experience rather, in my early career. So from the mid-90s to the early 2000s, I had the opportunity to work with extraordinary women. These women were just simply amazing. They changed my life. They taught me life also. They taught me resilience. And most of all, they taught me how to change with heart. Now, these women, their age was ranging between early teens to late 50s. They were traders. They were amazing souls. They traded to support their families and their children. Their trade, however, was a trade that's often frowned upon because they traded sex. They were commercial sex workers in the red light district. And I, at that time, was working with Médecins Sans Frontières, and our program was for HIV and AIDS prevention. And so we went into that community for that, you know, to prevent HIV and AIDS, further spread of it. And so how does this talk about feeding the system? And so this is the experience of my team. And at that time, even though we were all late 20s, early 30s, we went in not as saviors, not as with a flag of we have solutions for you. We didn't come in with judgment, but we came in as co-walkers of the journey of life. We came in to understand. We came in to listen. And we came in to ask them, from a coaching perspective to say, here's the reality. Ultimately, we're talking about HIV and AIDS. But in line of that, what path do you choose? Would you rather change professions or would you rather continue? And whichever you choose, we will support you. So for those who chose to change, we arrange various livelihood trainings, income generating activities, small trades that they could do. And for those who didn't feel that they could find anything else to do, we provided them training for safe practices and so that they don't fall victim to violence. And so when we say, how does it feed the system? It's really being in a system, understanding the system, and allowing the system to guide you into what is next. And that only happens when we come into a system suspending judgment, suspending possibly our biases. It's hard, but being intentional and being intentional about the ultimate result that we want. And in this case, the ultimate result was not to say, don't do this old profession. It wasn't that. It was to say, how can we keep you safe? What is it that we can do to support you in being safe? And how can we support you along the way? So this is the story I wanted to share with you about feeding the system. And when you look at it, that you're able to step back and say, I was operating mindful about the system, but also operating as myself, as a change agent with my self-awareness. So it is all one big whole and continue. And with this, I pass it to my friend and colleague, Dumi. Dumi, over to you.
Thank you so much. This is, yeah, it's both nourishing and sobering hearing the different stories that you shared. So thank you, Yane, Magda, Janet, and Renata for this space for us to connect, reconnect, engage with each other and share within this powerful subject of values, empowerment, and coaching. So in impacting our world, I believe that we need to start by understanding what that world is. And for me, we need to understand that it is a world of connection. We have so many shared spaces that need rehumanizing. And some of them are called workplaces, organizations, and all kinds of things where we collaborate, we cooperate, we need each other to drive towards results. So in impacting our world, my message is that many of us have shared is that we need to understand that we are each other's keepers. And the connection part starts with every encounter and greeting that we make. I grew up, and to share a story, in a rural village where you have a village here and a village there, and sparsely populated, not in an urban area. And I would, myself and my younger brothers, I'm firstborn of 7 children, and would run to school, but 7 kilometers one way. For those first years, barefoot, it's hot or cold with frost, you run through. But there's one thing that you did not make a mistake about. You had, if you meet and pass anyone, especially an adult, you make sure you stop your run, stop in your tracks, you stop and you greet properly, intentionally, and most importantly, consciously. This is why I've written up some things about conscious greeting. And if you take anything, take this to be one of the things you take away, conscious greeting. We need to learn to greet consciously. So I would stop in my tracks, carry my books in a plastic bag, and look at the adult and greet, and they'll find out, how are you? Yeah, I didn't say, I'm panting, I'm late, I need to go. I'll check in with them, how they are. The point of it is we need to greet consciously, intentionally, and connect with each other. If I didn't greet, they would make sure my parents got to hear of it, and you'll be disciplined. And you learn to do it. No one didn't do that. You learn to do that. So you embody those practices that now we take for granted in coaching. We do work with a group and you say, we need to check in. Are we really checking in? Or are we ticking a box? Checking in consciously means that you really get to see the mirrors all around you through everyone else's eyes. We are each other's mirrors. To impact our world, we need to connect consciously with each other. And that starts with conscious greeting. In isiZulu, in my language, in Southern Africa, we say sawubona. Sawubona literally means I see you. And when I see you and greet you consciously, I cannot unsee you. In other words, I get interested in your welfare consciously. This is why people take care of each other in every way. When we grew up, my grandmother and my mother would cook more food than we needed for dinner, always have a plate, one extra, for a passerby who may be late to go to reach their destination, and they will have some food to eat and somewhere to sleep. It was standard, normal practice. But in the urban areas where we literally live on top of each other, we hardly know each other. So the disconnection and the fragmentation that we see around the world is what we need to work on consciously to impact our world and rehumanize these shared spaces. So when I say sawubona, the other person can say, I see you. Meaning to impact our world in these shared spaces, we need to see each other consciously. And in the East, some of my friends in India, they say namaste. And meaning that the light in me recognizes the light in you. I see you, we are one. What Yene was talking about at the beginning, the sacred oneness of Ubuntu, that's what it is. So it's a global phenomenon. Wherever you find human beings, you will find this sacredness of human connection. With many of us, that microchip of knowing how to connect, to impact our world is only triggered or turned on, yes, I said turned on, switched on when there is a major, say, natural disaster, earthquakes and fires, and people rally to support each other. It doesn't have to be that. It's in our nature. It's part of our human essence to connect with each other, to impact our world with the values we need are Ubuntu values, the values of knowing that I'm connected to the next person and the next. We are an ecosystem together with climate, nature, everyone else. We are one interconnected system, and our world needs values of interconnection for us to break through the learned, the programmed and conditioned practices of separation and fragmentation. So just to wrap it up, I have one more gift for you, and it's called Ubuntu Intelligence. Ubuntu Intelligence, or UbuQ, now you have one more Q, IQ, EQ, CQ, this Q, now you have UbuQ, means Ubuntu Intelligence, living Ubuntu values to impact our world as your first nature every time, every day, knowing that my welfare is inextricably connected to the welfare of the next person. So great human empowerment is relational, and it starts with conscious greeting and living Ubuntu values through Ubuntu Intelligence, UbuQ. Now I'll hand over to Magda.
Thank you, Dumi, Yane, Janet. As you are listening to us, you may wonder, so how those stories fit together? Well, one, you see this nested egg, if you will, with the fact that it starts with an individual, and then this individual can become an agent of change, changing the system, and that system can impact the entire world. So what's the thread throughout those conversations? As my colleagues were talking, we heard sacred oneness. We heard the restoring humanity, or rehumanizing from Janet. We talked about practicing respect, inclusion, being welcoming and accepting. From Yena's story, suspending judgment, coming not as a savior, not as somebody who has all the answers, but rather as a friend, as a colleague, as somebody, an agent who can help figure out what's best. And again, not to impose that change necessarily, but to find the best way moving forward. We're talking about accepting the individual where they are. I wrote down, as my colleagues were talking, value the values of others. We all have our set of values. We all, this is what drives us. This is what is our North Star when we are facing difficult choices. That's the place to go back to, and that's the place to go from. And yet, when we're talking about coaching, it is to meet the person where they are and help them make the decision that is best for them. When Dumi and I spoke before, Ubuntu, which Yena, described for us, I am because you are, Dumi shared with me that the actual literal translation is, I cannot be fully me if you cannot be fully you. And to me, it's just a phenomenally powerful message for all of us, because we have that capacity of self-empowerment. We have this capacity of empowering others. Together, we have the capacity of empowering the systems and ultimately the world. Things don't happen because we're big groups come together and just figure out what's best for the humanity, right? It really comes from the values and from the self-empowerment of an individual. And while we talking about it, coaching, professional coaching is one of the most powerful tool to actually help a person, a system, feel empowered, to find means of knowing that the power of change is within, that the power of recognition, of embracing what we can change, right? And embracing as well what we can is within. So again, coming back to why the values and an empowerment and coaching come together, as in the title of our session, is exactly because of that. Because coaching empowers individuals and systems, organizations alike to act on their values, so that together we can get into that last layer in our beautiful circle, and it is to be for each other in a way of restoring humanity, meeting each other where we are for the better good, or greater good of the whole, rather than unique good of an individual or an individual organization. So with that, I think, Renata, I will get it back to you if we have any questions in the chat, and if not, I will invite my colleagues to share any reflections they may have around our conversation today.
Thank you, Magda. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for all this amazing insights. I actually learned a lot myself here. Um, we have some great comments. I invite you guys, you all that are watching, to submit your questions. We don't have an actual question yet, but I do have a question.
Go on.
Yeah, for this group. So I want to do it. Okay, so I want to have a big impact on my community on a particular challenge. How do I start it? I mean, I saw the stages, I saw the self-awareness. I believe I'm self-aware. Um, uh, I'm aware of the problem too, of the challenge. Now, how can I go from here as an individual here that is watching those amazing insights? How can I find a coach? How can I go through this journey? Because the willingness to do it is there. I just need, you know, that little push. How do I do it?
All right, I'll jump in, but then Ms. Harvey, you're on. Congratulations, you came to the first step, right? Not only that self-awareness, not only that desire to make a difference, but also understanding what the problem is. So the next very step is exactly how to make it happen, and what's the impact that you would like to have. I think many of us, including me, are impatient about how quickly we want to see the impacts. Impacts don't happen overnight. So sometimes it is a disciplined way of making sure that we understand different stages that have to happen before we actually see the impact. You know, your values are clearly driving you there, and a coach can help you find the most productive way, which is natural for you, and sometimes may require a lot of work to get you to where you want to be. And if you look into the core coaching competencies, that's exactly where what coaching will take you, not only to understand your own role in the process, but also how to get from point A to point B. But Janet, I saw you being unmuted, so I am very curious about your comments here.
Thank you, Magda, and you set the stage beautifully. So one of the things that's I think challenging for all of us as human beings is we adopt values very early on because they are our experience. Whatever our family of origin is, chosen or otherwise, we're entrusted in their care. And the way they behave with us teaches us what keeps us safe, what creates trust, what creates belief. And we learn to behave. Behavior is the physical expression of a belief in a way that honors our values. And somewhere along the way, mostly in our teenage years, sometimes young adult, we start to rail against those. And we start to find our own value system, what matters to us. Only we rarely bring our beliefs into currency. And what happens for so many people when they come into coaching, it's like, I know what I want, but I just can't seem to figure out where to go next. One of the first steps is to help you to see what are the constructions. That's a nice synonym for the word belief. What have you constructed as your worldview and your mindset about your capability, your contribution, your relationships, the system and network of people that you know and that care about you and that you care about them? How well do they know what's in your head and your heart and your gut for how you want to change the world? So many people have said to me over the years, nobody knows it, but I really want to change the world in this way. How come nobody knows? So the first step really in the nested circles, the self-awareness is not just of the things, congratulations, yes, you know you want to change the world and you know what the problem is. What's stopping you? What's stopping you? This is one of the first questions that would happen with a coach, to say, I see all of your potential. And where have you chosen to keep the door closed? Because when you open that door, you're going to see a window, and then you can open that window and it enters onto a beautiful garden. It's all about opening layer after layer in you so that you're unstoppable. That's the power of a coaching conversation.
Oh, I love that. Renata, can I come in after that? Thanks, Mark and Janet. Beautiful. I love that. The windows opening. Yeah, I wanted to just touch on, Mark, you mentioned the core competencies, and I think it's one of the core competencies is cultivating trust and safety. And to me, that's one of the most important, and it speaks to what Janet is talking about. To really start, you've got to want to be of service. Coaching is a sacred service to humanity, one conversation at a time. And there's got to be a trusting relationship. Yes, we call it building rapport and all that. But that trust and safety, for someone to feel safe to be vulnerable with you, they've got to be invested in it to some level. And that's opening up those layers that Janet is talking about. And for them to trust you, to walk with them in their journey of that self-awareness we're talking about, self-discovery, self-knowing, that there's a level of vulnerability that others have. This is why we call coaching is a sacred profession of service. So I want to add something just to push the button a little bit. You can't coach someone if you don't really love them.
Agreed.
Yanni, any reflection of what we heard so far?
Yeah, thank you. It's also beautiful. Thank you for that, Dumi. And you know, and I was thinking about, I work a lot with organizations these days, and today we had a 3-long-hour session with one of the UN agencies to discuss culture change, to having more value within the culture of the organization. And how do you bring that change in the culture so that the culture actually represents the values that the organization is claiming it has? And it kind of went into the same way that you were just sharing with us. It's to say, what is your individual value and how are you living that? How are you staying in integrity with it? How are you making a little bit of space for that to show up and to grow? Where can you find the courage to actually stand up for your values? Like you said, Janet, we construct certain values, but maybe do we actually take time to step back and check, is that really my value, or did I just inherit it and I don't want to even shake the boat? So I was in a situation this summer where I had to have some courageous conversations with people within my own family circle. But I am from Ethiopia. We don't really speak up to elders, to parents. But sometimes if you believe in that value of saying, I want to be authentic, I want to be candid, then it's going to take that little courage to actually find the words to speak up so that you can practice your values. And once you cross that threshold, actually you see that, well, the sun is still rising tomorrow and most people appreciate it. So we have this fear. Janet, you are asking you, what's holding you back? It's the fear of judgment, the fear of being disapproved, the fear of retaliation oftentimes, the fear of the unknown that's holding us back from living our values. And I think it all starts by saying, what do I really, really want in this world? How do I want to spend my life? What would really bring me meaning? And where can I find the courage to take that first step in engaging in that journey, even if I don't know what step 3, 4 will be like, even if I don't know what step 11 is, I know what step 1 is. Once you've done step 1, take the next step 1. And every step is only a step 1 forward. So I hope I didn't get over on a different tangent, but this was the thought I was having. Back to you, Renata.
Can I build on something Jenny just said? I think this is so
Yeah.
important. Our parents are so influential to us. And again, whether it's our biological or our chosen family, whatever that might be, they teach us so much that we take for granted. It's quite hidden. And I'm remembering a story, Jenny, with my father, the first moment as an adult when I vehemently disagreed with him. And it had to do with the subject of a woman's right to choose. I had the courage to challenge his premise, his underlying premise. And we stayed in the conversation, calm, respectful. And at the end, he said, I'll march with you tomorrow, because for the first time, I understand that this is about you having choice. Oh my God, the healing that's possible when we're courageous to stand for what matters to us, to stand for our values, and be in relationship. If I'd gone away angry and never had that conversation, we'd never have built the bridge, and he never would have been able to step in to that heart that he really had for the issue. This matters a lot, what we're talking about here.
So speaking of values then, how do I know when it's time to follow that call? When that's the right call for me, that it's truly spoke to my value, that it's not a distraction. Any recommendations there for this audience?
We haven't talked about the body, so I'll kick us off here and then everybody add in. My body starts to shake internally. I get a feeling in my windpipe, almost like somebody else is breathing me, and my belly gets a little quivery, and sometimes I get a little teary-eyed. That's when I know that the essence of the problem is mine to take on.
I see Eve saying gut feeling, so very much supporting what Janet just said. Oftentimes when you talk about values, a checkpoint might be what would you give up for that value to speak through you? Would you be willing to lose your livelihood? Would you be willing to lose some of a family members or friends over that? Would you be willing to be exposed to physical harm? And it could be, different levels there. But I think that these are some questions that one may ask themselves. So it's like, I think it's so important what all of us here said is that conviction needs to be yours, right? Otherwise, it may be that imposed. Janet and I happen to know each other forever. And I remember at one point we were talking about celebrating successes. I know that many of you here on this call are not from the United States. I am originally from Poland. I have been living in the States for 20 plus years. And there is a value that are, say, attributed to different words that are very different in my language, my native language, versus in English. So Janet says something about celebrating success, and then I get gut feeling, and I'm like, this is just the show. This is not real. This is not what's happening when you really want to acknowledge accomplishment. So acknowledgement versus celebration. One may say semantics, but these are important. These are important to make sure that we understand if this is truly innately in us, vis-a-vis what may be a social norm, maybe a family norm, slightly imposing on us.
So before Yeni and Dumi can chime in, I would invite everyone to put on the chat, what is that call? When do you feel that call? Some people already said the gut feeling. Others say there's something in my heart. So can you help us, please, on the chat to just, enrich this conversation and tell us what is it that you feel? What is your visceral response to when the time is there? So Dumi, Yeni, you want to add anything?
Dumi, do you want to go? Shall I go? I just want to quickly share. Sometimes values is a big word that is a bit too fuzzy. I like to think of it as the principles in which I choose to live my life, and the courage that it takes me to actually come out of the closet with it and be open about it. So inside, I'm thinking I value and I live according to the principles of mutual respect, care, etc. And then on the outside, when that doesn't happen with the people that I'm interacting with, it took me a couple of years, actually. It just only happened in the past couple of years that I started developing the courage to speak up. But before that, I didn't, because I said to myself, no, that's just being too. And then you're like, it's okay, I'm gonna let it pass. But what happens every time I let it pass, every time I don't speak up, it leaves something on me. It leaves something on me. But every time I speak up, it becomes another story of empowerment. It becomes another pearl that I can add on my pearl necklace. It becomes beautiful, because maybe at the beginning, it might be a little bit awkward to speak up, but then making space for myself to speak up and say, actually, this is what I believe in. And so I'm going to give you an example. I had a client that is a very demanding client and who wanted to do something where there was no time. They're asking, like, they take their time and then they come back and want something tomorrow. You're like, no, I don't have time. Then the client kept insisting in quite a large meeting to say, no, but make time. I said, unfortunately, I don't have that gift of God, so I don't have time. I wish I could extend my calendar. And it took something to stand up to that person, because it's a client that I do a lot of contracts with. And finally they said, okay. I said, good. And now it just became a story. But if I had caved in, it would have left a smear on me, not a good feeling. Dumi,
Yeah.
what's your thoughts?
Yeah. Beautiful. It's a powerful question, Renata. And for me, what we need to be aware of when you talk about values, empowerment, and then this subject of when you don't speak your truth, when you're not authentic to yourself, as you're saying, something happens. You feel and you know that you're inauthentic, and it's about that courage. I think, Janet, what you're talking about, the courage to be true to yourself is a powerful one. And this is why, as coaches, we need to choose the figure that we pick up and hold up to the client to say, I noticed this, I hear you say this. That in itself is an act of courage. But in some places, in some contexts, not just in some families, Janet and your dad, in many respects, opening your mouth to speak up is an act of courage. Even in some families, in some religions, in some places. So now in a coaching relationship, it's supposed to be sacred and about a person's development. There is need for that on both sides. And in any human interaction, there should be recognition that my part, what Magda was saying towards the end there about Ubuntu, part of my responsibility on this earth, in this limited human lifespan, because where they say people that are going to be 200 are alive already. But in this limited lifespan, I need to make an impact. And I can do that if I allow others to be themselves, speak up, speak their truth. So it is so important that we listen to that voice inside, says, am I being true to myself or not? And stay on course, because our truth, ourselves, is what will help unleash the gift within me and give permission to others to unleash the gifts within them, because we reflect on each other.
Yeah. Can I jump in here? I saw, I don't know how to answer to a comment that was on top, but Eva, you were saying that when you hesitate, that you need to revisit your values. Is it really it? And that's really great, because we claim certain values that come with certain behaviors. And if there's incoherence between the value and the behavior, then that's a good chance for us to actually check in. Is it my values that are incoherent, or is it the behavior that I actually need to take time to fine tune to the values? That's really, really key. And thank you for bringing that up. Hi, Eva.
Hi, thanks for that, Yene. I'm in Athens, Greece, and I have a bad connection, so that's why my video is off, and so I'm able to really get everything in. Yeah, I find that our values change as we grow older. Might change, not that they are, and that we need to be conscious of that. I think we do have core values, like our core, our nucleus is there, and when we recognize that, that is really what really shakes us up when it's being challenged or whatever. Because as you grow and circumstances change, and I think we all know, and we live in this really uncertain world, that values tend to change. So it's very, I think what Dumi said, to be conscious about these things, to be really mindful about what's going on, especially in coaching, to really develop that space, create that space for people to freely express their values or their beliefs and question them, or do whatever they need to do to move forward. So I really appreciate that, and I just wanted to put that little input there. It's a great conversation.
I would like to recommend, and I'll put it in the chat, there's a lot of great work being done by Ken Wilber on the integral approach that really illustrates this very well. So I will put it in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we are approaching, well, actually, we even passed 2 minutes already. I want to thank you all attendees, and for the great questions and the great comments, and also Janet and Magda, Yene and Dumi for this fantastic, really life-changing comments and insights that you brought up. On behalf of the International Coaching Federation, we invite you to check our site, to check resources there that may help through your journey, your own journey. Is coachingfederation.org. If no more questions, or Magda, I don't know if you want to just say a final thank you to this group, and we can complete then.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tiffany, for putting the our URL in the chat. So please do come and check what we have to offer as an organization. But more importantly, thank you so much for choosing to be participants in this particular conversation. I think nowadays, getting our connection back to our values and who we are and who we want to be in particular is crucial. It's absolutely quintessential to who we are becoming as the world, really, as a human race. So thank you so very much, Renata, for organizing it, Tiffany for supporting us, Janet, Dumi, Yene, you're my peeps. And thank you so much for everybody who was with us in this last hour. I hope it's gonna resonate for a little while longer with everyone, as I know it will with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
you.